This is a Miyabi 7000 D Chutoh. It's from the Henkel's Japanese sort of flare line. It's a very nice knife, very high finish. I mean, much more than your standard sort of twin star Henkel's, which most people are relatively familiar with. I like this knife, by the way. But this is a whole different level of aesthetics. In terms of raw performance, we'll see. I haven't done a lot of work with it yet. But I did do some utility cutting, which I like to do no matter what knife I got. Plastic bottles, some rolled up foam. The yellow things are basically the strips from a screw gun left over. Some very heavy plastic rolled up mouse pads, some pallet wrapping, some other foam, and cardboard. And that does little to nothing to the edge, which is still extremely sharp. And the edge started off with a finish from an 8000 grit waterstone, and unless I went out of my way to measure this quantitatively, it's very difficult to see any difference. It's still sailing through the paper. So now what I'm going to do is a fairly rough check on the edge retention and the edge durability, just to see how the knife handles in extended use, and if there's any real significant problems that leap out for me in regards to the edge. Plus, hopefully, I'll do enough to the edge anyway to see how it responds to some sharpening and some fairly extreme use for a kitchen knife. But in general, I mean, considering the steel that this is made out of and the edge angles and stuff, it's not really that extreme, because I have utility knives out of the same steel with the same edge angle and thickness. So while what I'm about to do is a bit extreme for a kitchen knife, it's not that extreme in general. And I'm going to time lapse it because it's a fair amount of cutting. So we've done a little bit of cutting. No effect on the edge that can be seen. It's not reflecting light. No significant effect on paper cutting whatsoever. So we've reduced our stick down to this little stub with a nice little Chutoh kitchen knife. No rolling visible, no chipping, micro or otherwise. The edge looks perfectly fine. No effect on slicing newsprint that I can see. And requires a bit of an angle to do a push cut, which it didn't before. So some loss of sharpness can be detected, but relatively minor. Now this is a very coarse check on edge retention. There's no real measurements of edge sharpness. There's no benchmark to judge the performance against, because wood can vary in texture and abrasiveness and a bunch of other things. But even at this coarse a level, I mean, I can obviously say that there's nothing seriously wrong with the steel or how it was hardened, because it went through all that cutting with, again, no deformation, no chipping, and only a very slight amount of blunting. Essentially, it was able to take the knife away from the ability to push cut on a perpendicular to requiring a bit of an angle. And the main purpose of this is just for me to do a sort of gross check on edge retention in durability in a fairly rapid way. I mean, you can sit down and knock this out in about 10 minutes or so, steady carving. And the other thing, so now later on I'll actually do some quantitative edge retention comparisons by using, say, this knife and the other Henkels and a bunch of other knives, and cut some cardboard and some ropes and do some measures of the actual sharpness and see how it actually behaves. But I don't expect any surprises. I mean, this should behave just like any standard VG10 blade around 60 Rockwell, so it should do fairly well in general for most types of cutting. And this is, like I said, a relatively high-end knife from Henkels.